everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Heather and it's been a rough week. So I'm going to try and hold it together and try to cheer myself up with telling you about all of the books and bookish things that I received over the last few months of 2022. In those last few months, I had 2 trips to New York City, there were bookshop sales, and my birthday and Christmas fell in those months. So I have a lot of items to show you in the hopes that you too could be interested in these books and bookish things. First, in the category of things that are not books that I need to talk about in order to move them off the stacks of books. First, from Marissa of Blatantly Bookish, this lovely scarf covered in books, which just looks soft and wonderful, and I can't wait to wear it, as well as this very cute owl bookmark. Then from my cousin's wife Kristen, a total surprise, these ornaments, which I'm going to try to get a better shot of. Well, first of all, they say Heather's Books of 2022, and they are full of little cutouts of books that I read in 2022. So we have a Rumpole audiobook, Godmersham Park, one Mrs. England by Stacey Halls, More Than Marmalade, Infamous. And these are just really lovely, so I can't wait to hang them on the tree next year. I also received a new Jane Austen puzzle, but I will have to show that off on Instagram, and my link is in the description box down below. I have to show that off because it is half started downstairs and I cannot drag it up for you. But I will show it off on Instagram once I have finished it. I then received 2 opera recordings, which I thought I would show off as they're kind of like plays or films. The first I bought myself, and it is Theodora by Handel, which is one that I've never heard of before. I believe it tells the story of a Christian martyr or Christian martyrs, but it has a fantastic cast. Lisette Oropesa, my favorite soprano in the world, Joyce DiDonato, one of my favorite mezzos in the world, and Michael Spires, who is an incredible tenor who can also sing baritone, and I can't wait to listen to this. And then from my parents, I also got Il Castello di Kenilworth by Donizetti, which is not part of his Elizabethan trilogy, which I find very odd because clearly it takes place in Elizabethan times. And this is an adaptation of Sir Walter Scott's novel Kenilworth, about Kenilworth Castle, which was important in the Elizabethan era, but I can't remember exactly how. But I cannot wait to listen to this as well. And now we get into the books. Firstly, from my parents for my birthday, they got me both books in the Jane Austen series by Ada Bright and Cass Grafton, being The Particular Charm of Miss Jane Austen, which you can hear about in my favorite books of 2022 video, and The Unexpected Past of Miss Jane Austen, which takes us back into the Regency era. I love both of these very, very much, and I'm really pleased to have physical copies. Then also from Marissa of Blatantly Bookish as a joint Christmas and birthday present, in addition to the scarf and the bookmark, she also got me The Haunting Season, which is a collection of short stories by a variety of historical fiction authors, most of whom I really, really love, so I'm very excited to read their short stories. The authors included are Bridget Collins, Imogen Hermes Gower, Kieran Millwood Hargrave, Andrew Michael Hurley, Jess Kidd, Elizabeth McNeil, Natasha Pulley, and Laura Purcell. I love half of those authors, and I've heard really great things about 3 more of those authors, so I'm very, very excited for this. And she also got me How to Be a Victorian by Ruth Goodman, which I have been meaning to read for ages. I loved Ruth Goodman's How to Be a Tutor, I'm sure this one is going to be just as fabulous. I can't decide if I should save it for Victober or if I should read it whenever I feel like it, because quite honestly, I always say I'm going to read a nonfiction book about the Victorian era in October, and then I never do. So I'll think about it, but I'm very glad to have it either way. Then from my parents for Christmas, I was given He Knew He Was Right by Anthony Trollope, which I am very excited to read. This is, I believe, another of his standalones, which chronicles a husband's doubts about his wife, about how he's afraid that she is having an affair. And the more things happen that are meant to try and dissuade him of this fact, the more convinced he becomes of it. And it sounds really anxiety inducing, but also really, really interesting, and I can't wait to finally read it. They also gave me Lucy Worsley's biography of Agatha Christie, which looks amazing, although I have had to read a couple Agatha Christie's before I get to this, because luckily I was talking to Marissa right after I received this, and she read it in November. And she said it is very, very good, but it does spoil the endings of The Murder of Roger Ackroyd and Crooked House. So be sure to read those before you read this. So I have done that now. Part of me is now scared to read it altogether because much as I love Lucy Worsley as a historian and as a presenter and as a writer, she does tend to spoil novels in her books about literature. So I'm kind of afraid that there are going to be more in here, but I will hold on to it nonetheless. And they also gave me Devotion by Hannah Kent, which sounds amazing and is beautiful. And this is the story of two young women who are traveling from Germany to Australia in the hopes of finding religious freedom and a better life, but who I believe also begin to fall in love with each other. I think I heard on someone's channel that this book is also Hannah Kent's love letter to her wife. Yes, I believe so. So that makes it extra special, and I can't wait to get to this one. Then come books that I bought myself that were either on sale or that I found on trips. This is both. This was a book that I found in New York, did not buy at the time, but then I could not stop thinking about it. So I picked it up afterwards in a Boxing Day sale, and that is A Marvelous Light by Freya Marsk. I have heard fabulous things about this book from a variety of UK reviewers. It is now available in the US, although I did end up ordering the UK edition anyway. And this sounds amazing. This is, I believe, a love story between two men in an alternate, magical Edwardian England. What more could I ask for? This sounds utterly amazing, and I can't wait to fall into it. I also finally ordered Tevye the Dairyman and Model the Cantor's Son by Sholem Aleichem, and these were translated by Aliza Chevrin from the Yiddish to English, and apparently it is a new translation. I don't know what the old translation was like, but I'm excited to see this one. These are the short stories, I believe, that the musical Fiddler on the Roof was based on. So I've been wanting to read them for a while anyway, and this was compounded by the fact that I saw Fiddler on the Roof in Yiddish in New York City in 2018, and it was just revived on stage in New York City this past Christmas season. And I did not get to go, but they had lovely videos advertising it and talking to the cast about what is it like redoing such a famous piece in Yiddish. And a lot of them said how much closer the dialogue is to what Sholem Aleichem originally wrote, and that having it done in Yiddish, even if you don't speak Yiddish, somehow it becomes extra poignant. The jokes are even funnier than they were in English, and that is absolutely true. There was extra emotional depth, despite the fact that at the time I spoke no Yiddish whatsoever. I have been training on Duolingo. So a combination of all of those factors made me really want to pick up these original stories, and Penguin is a company who I trust when it comes to giving us really good translations of non-English literature. I also ordered Whatever Next by Lady Anne Glenconner. I read her book Lady in Waiting 2 years ago. It was early 2020, and I loved it. She was very close with the royal family in the early years in the 40s and the 50s. She was Lady in Waiting to Princess Margaret for many, many years. She was part of, I don't remember if it was Queen Elizabeth's coronation or her wedding, but she was part of one of those celebrations. And she had an incredible life, both good and bad. And I loved reading her biography of that time. So this is her second book, and these are her reflections on what she has learned now that she has turned 90, I believe. I think being a very down-to-earth and a very practical and a very funny person, I think I'm going to really enjoy reading these life lessons from her. Then, despite the fact that I knew I was going to receive books for holidays, I had to pick up some when I was in New York City, such as when I went to see Straight Line Crazy. They were selling copies of the play by David Hare, which are signed by David Hare. So I had to pick one up. This was a play that I would not have been interested in had Ray Fiennes not been in it. But I'm so glad that I did see it. He plays Robert Moses, who was a real person who was responsible for the building of a lot of highways and parks in and around New York City and Long Island in New York. He is also quite a controversial figure. On the one hand, his tenacity and his determination are admirable to the point of being almost frightening. On the other hand, he may or may not have been incredibly racist, because a lot of the decisions that he made in terms of where he was going to build, who was going to be able to access those places, were not necessarily friendly to lower income families, many of whom were people of color. And I think Ray Fiennes is the perfect person to play both sides of such a complicated person. I loved watching it, especially because I knew a lot of the places that they were mentioning around Long Island. I have lots of family on Long Island. I've been traveling there for my entire life. And throughout New York City, he would mention building an exit somewhere and people would go, like, oh yeah, that place is still trouble right now. Which makes me wonder how this played in London, where people wouldn't have had that knowledge. But I'm really pleased to have this. It's a very rare copy, and I'm pleased to have it, because I love David Hare's other plays as well. And on that same trip, I picked up Sister Novelists by Devaney Loser, I think. I had been talking to Megan of Megan the Story Girl after she had gone to the Jasna AGM in Canada this year, and Devaney Loser gave one of the presentations that Megan went to, and she said she was wonderful and highly recommended this book. And then I found it in New York City, so I had to pick it up. This is the story of the Porter sisters, who were writing at the same time as Jane Austen and Sir Walter Scott, and paved the way for even more female novelists. But yet we never hear about them in particular. So I'm really intrigued to find out more about them, what they wrote, how they managed to get them published, what effect that had on their lives. It is a chunkster, so I don't know when I'm going to get to this, but I'm very excited to at some point. Then the last time I was in the city in December, I picked up 3 more books. The first was this copy of Waverley by Sir Walter Scott, which is perhaps one of his most famous The train station in Edinburgh is named Waverley Station for this book, and I believe the series, I think it's part of a series. And this retells the Jacobite uprising, I believe. So I'm very excited to get to that. And I also finally found a copy of Ruth by Elizabeth Gaskell, which I have been wanting to read for many, many years. And this is Elizabeth Gaskell's take on the fallen woman trope, I believe. And that's really all I know, and that's all I want to know about it right now. And then finally, I found this complete surprise, Hotel Splendide by Ludwig Bemelmans, who wrote the Madeline books. I loved Madeline when I was a tiny child. I still have my Madeline, who I am not going to show. She is extremely bedraggled and well-loved after 29 years. But I never knew that he wrote for adults until I saw this book. They claim that this is his memoir. I don't know if it's his actual memoir or if it's a fictionalized memoir of his time working in an upscale New York hotel around in the early part of the 1900s. And I'm going to read you the flat because it sounds fantastic. Welcome to the Grand Hotel Splendide in 1920s New York, where hilarity and chaos reign. In the mirror-lined dining halls, the champagne is constantly flowing. In the kitchens downstairs, malcontent waiters incite revolution. In this classic memoir, Ludwig Bemelmans encounters eccentricity on every level of the hotel hierarchy, as he works his way up from busboy at the restaurant's most undesirable table to assistant manager of the magnificent private banquets. There may be Russian ballerinas and Wall Street tycoons to entertain, but there is also Mes Poulet, the world's worst waiter, to contend with, and a murder plot against Monsieur Victor, the authoritarian maître d'hôtel, to solve. Accompanied by Bemelman's own witty illustrations, this account of a bygone era of extravagance is as charming as it is riotously entertaining. How could I not pick that up? It sounds amazing. Plus, it's got his own little illustrations throughout, it looks like. I had to pick it up. It just sounds charming and wonderful. And lastly, because this week has been a particularly rough week, I ordered 4 books from The Strand, which are on their way, by Eliza Haywood. I have her Love in Excess here, which I've been meaning to read, but then I feel like I should also save it for around Jane Austen July. So I ordered 4 more, so now I can read Eliza Haywood whenever I feel like it. And the 4 I ordered are Phantomina, The Mercenary Lover, The Fatal Secret, and A Wife to Be Let. A Wife to Be Let is a play that she wrote, which I'm particularly intrigued to read as it sounds kind of like The Mayor of Casterbridge. And in addition, apparently Eliza Haywood acted in it herself when the lead actress got sick on opening night, which was incredible for the time. So I'm very intrigued to see what it was like and what part she may have played, because that may give me an idea of who she was as a person. And lastly, I forgot one book, I'm so sorry, but that was Shadow of Night by Deborah Harkness, which was part of a lovely blind date with a book pamper set that my dear friend Amanda sent me. So thank you so much, Amanda. This is book 2 in the Discovery of Witches series, in which our 2 main characters travel back in time to Elizabethan England to try to unravel more of the mystery that they are embroiled in. And this is a world in which witches and vampires do exist, and it centers around academia. What more could I want? So there you have all of the delightful bookish items that I received for my birthday, Christmas, these last few months of the winter. I cannot wait to start on a lot of these. Let me know down below whether you particularly loved any of these or if you have further questions or excitement about any of these. I always love chatting to you down below about them as it makes me extra excited to read them. And until next time, be safe, be well, and happy reading. Bye, everyone.